There are things known and there are things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. Aldous Huxley.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 3, Episode 6. The Avatar and the Firelord. And we're back with another episode of Bending, Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
You are so loud when you do
it's
that.
Never gonna change. So one time when I was young, like third grade,
Like, it's so loud.
my teacher wrote on my report card.
We all jumped.
has a booming voice.
Who?
My teacher on my third grade report card wrote, has a booming voice, needs to work on it.
And so you're choosing to embrace it rather than work on it?
Yeah, it's part of my identity. I'm keeping it.
Okay. All right. I'm
Did
just
it-
saying it throws me off every time.
It really is it peak the sound, Max?
Max doesn't have a microphone this episode.
That's right, because we have a guest.
That's right.
Another special guest.
That's right. But first, I'm
I
Ben
also
Pruitt.
love just taking
Who are you?
the mic away from Max. I already said I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
Oh, I'm Ben. And then our guest.
Hi, I'm the voice actress for Cricket for May. I had a totally funny joke and I botched it because Cricket Lee, May Whitman is the voice actress for Katara.
Yes.
May is the character voice for Cricket Lee.
Yeah.
It's all a mess. I'm super funny. My name is Cameron.
Hi, Cameron. Welcome to the show.
We're so excited to have you on. This is already going to be fun.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Cricket was on the show last week and was phenomenal.
Loved her
Love
insights. So cool. Yeah. As just having a mental health expert coming in to provide us with wonderful context and voice actress. Really cool.
So cool. And that's what's great is, Cameron, how are you going to follow that up?
I'm not. Really. I'd like to make it very clear. I'm going to blame, though, that I was just still shaken from the jump from your introduction.
See? Yeah.
You'll get used to it.
Yeah. But yeah, so Cameron, tell us a little bit about you and what led you from A to B to C to eventually getting on this podcast? Like, how do you know us? What's the deal here?
What was your life path that,
Yeah.
that converged to this
harmonic
podcast?
convergence, right?
Oh, wow.
What led you here?
I-
Which is clearly the pinnacle.
This is it. This is peak. This is the peak. I started watching Avatar when it aired in. God, it was a long time ago.
It's 2005.
Yeah. Which
Yes.
to me seems
Yeah.
like when people say 10 years ago, I'm like, yeah, the mid 2000s, but it was actually 15.
Yeah,
or
isn't that
more.
crazy?
And, so that's terrifying. But I was a long time watcher. It captivated me to see a program that did not talk down to I was not a child at the time, but
Yeah.
that didn't talk down to the audience it was working with. And so I obviously became hooked right away. Almost every episode I caught. There was some weird stuff with airing season 3 where they didn't air it for a while or didn't anyway. And then it was a staple because in college, when Netflix first started being a online streaming
When you
service.
had to have the disc to put in,
Yes.
to upload it to your device.
Old school Netflix, but I actually had the DVDs, but when it started streaming on Netflix, when they started streaming, Avatar was one of the things they had, and I was like, oh, loop this the entire time. In my dorm room, it was constantly on, but it got me through a lot. I mean, obviously, I think we all know that there's a lot of wisdom to be found in the show.
For sure.
Hello, this podcast.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, we are benefiting greatly from the wisdom that we did not write and have anything to do with. It's wonderful.
Repeating wisdom that
Yeah.
other people wrote.
Yeah.
People make a whole career off of that.
Yeah, just regurgitating. Like the audience is our baby bird.
I'm so jealous of you.
Maxon like that joke.
Anyway, I'm jealous that you got to experience it live because I didn't find Avatar until much later. I was watching it on, I think Amazon had it for free, and I watched it on Amazon Prime, and I started watching it just on a whim, and all of a sudden I was binging it until I finished because I was just oh my god, this is so good. And then I watched it subsequently multiple times and then talked Sunshine into it, right?
Yep.
It was I'm kind of jealous that you got to experience it live.
Oh, so great. I mean, it is a big part of how I got to where I am. I'm a huge dork.
Love that.
Obviously. You quoted Aldous Huxley, which is funny because I'm wearing a Doctor Strange shirt, which is Doors of Perception. Anyway, it really got to me. It helped shape me into who I am, like a lot of nerd things in pop culture. That was my point by bringing up my geekiness. It helped shape a lot of who I was. The mythology and the world building, all of that stuff, because I love writing and themes and like analyzing film and television and that kind of stuff. That's what I like to do.
That's
like,
awesome.
I'm that guy that spends hours watching, like Lindsay Ellis on YouTube, or like film critiques and film reviews. Look up Lindsay Ellis. She's great.
Cool. So I love having this perspective as almost like super fan kind of a deal in terms of being someone who's really just invested in the material in a way that we never got to do because we literally didn't get to see it when it was airing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really awesome that we get to have this really cool, unique perspective.
And it's cool to talk about Perception today because viewing it even now, even though I viewed it, then viewing it now as an adult.
Oh, that's
completely
so cool.
different perspective.
That's great.
Which is even weird for me as viewing it as an adult and then viewing it with intention and lenses each episode is absolutely a different
Hugely
experience.
different. I noticed some things on this rewatch that I never noticed before just because of looking at it through the lens of perception. And it was really like some things were a little problematic that I did not find problematic before, which was pretty fascinating. Speaking of...
You didn't think Sozin's behavior was problematic the first time
No,
around?
that wasn't what I was referring to. I thought it's pretty
That went
problematic.
over your head the first time you watched the show?
Generous assumption, sunshine. Generous assumption.
I tried so hard to have the most generous assumption of Sozin. It didn't work. I still have a very terrible first draft.
Maybe we'll work through that. Maybe. But
I hate
let's
him.
start at the beginning and talk about our lens. So we chose perception, right? And I'm curious, just for either of you, like what does perception mean, so that we can all be on the same page?
Go ahead. Yeah, take it away.
I was deferring to you.
Oh,
That
great.
was me deferring.
So I think for me, it's perception is our experiences, our lenses, our biases, everything that come together, the way that we view a world or a moment or a happening. And then the quote that always comes to mind is perception is reality. My perception of what is going on is my truth of what is going on. And so that is something that I think we need to challenge this episode. But that's when I think of perception, that's typically the way that I think of it.
I loved the definition, actually, when I looked it up on this, just from dictionary.com I don't even know if it's that, but dictionary.
Sponsor us.
Google dictionary, right? It's the ability to become aware through our senses, which, y'all, that's like the purpose of this podcast, is become more aware, right? And not necessarily through our senses, but like to become aware, period. And like perception, that's a really interesting definition for me.
I think that's actually really, that encompasses it. Good job, dictionary.com, or whoever gives this podcast money first.
Yeah. Yeah, let's start a bidding war between Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com.
I'm here for that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely playing off of that and kind of like what Sunshine was saying. It's about, your experiences, because that's how you view the world. So, and which is perception. So how do you view what you're seeing? How do you view the world? How do you experience the media you're taking in?
Yeah.
Well, I think you used the analogy during a mini episode a few weeks back about a mirror and the way that we see ourselves and the perception of ourselves.
Yeah.
And how the people that we surround
You
ourselves
listened to my
with.
mini episode?
I hope you listened to mine.
Oh, sure, totally.
So,
Escandalo.
But I think it is important that the way that we view the world, the impact that the people that we're with, the people that we surround ourselves with, how they shape that perception as well. So it's almost a joint perception that's created by other people and the people that you live with or you're near. I think that's probably important to lift up too before we dive into this this very dense episode.
This is a
that is
packed
told
episode.
by different perspectives, right?
Exactly.
So, then we see how those navigate each other, but we see them through one story, which I think is interesting because it plays together like it's one combined story, so not necessarily two different perspectives on it.
I mean, you hear a concept in writing about, a reliable narrator or an unreliable narrator, but this story has two narrators, so I assume they're
Right?
both reliable because they don't seem to contradict each other.
Well, they don't, but you would assume, but going into it, you would think that the one who's got his story hidden and doesn't want anyone to find it,
Yeah.
probably might not be telling
his tomb.
whole truths.
Well,
Yeah.
it's so interesting how we can tell the same story, but our motives are completely different in that, in the same, you might be talking about the same events, but the motives behind those events come across completely differently.
So let's talk about motives real fast. Let's jump into the episode if we can.
I'm ready.
The motive of we're so prosperous. I want to share that prosperity with the world.
Good old imperialism.
Yeah, under this guise of no, I really want to take the world over. But does he truly believe in that moment? I want to share this with the world by conquering it.
So he didn't say that.
He says we are so prosperous. I want to share that with everyone.
Yes, but he did not say through conquering it.
Well, would you?
Like,
Would you say that?
But was conquering it the way that he wanted to go about it, or did he truly believe in just sharing the ideals of the Fire Nation?
The fact that he started, I mean, we're shown that he starts colonizing the Earth Kingdom. Because Roku goes to investigate and sees the banner, and that's...
Goes Avatar State, blows up
that
the building.
prompts the throne room fight.
That wasn't a fight. There was no fight there. That was one individual swinging and missing, and then being put up on top of a earth pike.
I want to see the servants have to take him down.
Right?
Yeah.
Who got him down?
But did you notice Roku didn't use firebending against Sozin?
No, I did not notice.
In that fight, he uses earth, he uses air, but he does not... He destroys the throne room with a big blast of air.
Yeah.
And he puts Sozin up on the earth pike. And but I wonder if that's, because I can outmatch him this way, or if it's he's a better firebender than I am.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Just something I noticed on this watch through. But
I like to think of it as look what I learned. You don't know this. This is
in a
I'm
way,
peacocking
right?
right now.
I think he was demonstrating exactly what it was to this is an example of the power that I have gleaned over time, and I am now able to use things that you aren't, and I'm going to show you that.
Correct.
yeah.
Right? So that kind of is interesting because I want to talk about that moment, because Roku, I think that when Sozin said that, Roku reacted in a way that was problematic for me.
Well, because our reactions always tell me more. We hope that's what we've kind of said.
Right?
Talk to me more about why that's what you believe in
Well,
and what you want to do versus, no, that's not the way that it's supposed to be.
Well,
Which I think that's
think about that though. How could this entire scenario have been different if Roku had reacted in a compassionate way and said, I don't understand. Can you tell me more about what you mean? And then had a not aggressive reaction, but rather a conversation about the implications.
That's interesting because think about who Roku's avatar guide would have been.
Which is Kyoshi, right?
Take no prisoners, Kyoshi.
I haven't read the novel yet.
I like Kiyoshi.
Yeah.
She's fun.
She is fun.
Headcanon, she murdered him. Show canon, I think he just fell.
I think he fell.
But headcanon, she murdered him.
Also internet canon.
Yeah. People are very much behind the Kiyoshi likes to kill people.
Yeah. I haven't read the novel, so I don't have an opinion on that yet. But
No, I'm basing this on the show. The novel is great, though. Highly recommend. But I think that Roku... I think it could also be attributed to, how these two have been friends their entire life. So it's possible that you think you know a person really well and you take a guess, wrong or not, but you take a guess without really getting to know them. You're like, based on my experience with you, I know that this is what you mean, and so I'm going to react.
And he was right. Well, let's be honest. He was right. He assumed correctly. And I just wonder if all of this could have been prevented had he reacted differently.
I think so. I legitimately think so. I think with the conversation around, tell me why you feel this way, let's talk about this, all would have been possible. I wonder how much of Sozin's behavior is also triggered by I was supposed to be I'm gonna be the Firelord. I'm supposed to be the most powerful being in at least my friend group.
Yeah.
As opposed to
And then finding
hey,
out when you're
my
16
best friend,
that your best friend
is the
yeah.
Avatar.
when you're 16 and super vulnerable and testosterone is everywhere.
Yes. No, but like really though, that's real. Oh.
Yeah.
And so how much does that play into him like, no, I'm gonna prove I'm more powerful than you.
Yeah. Wow.
I think that's got to be part of it.
Well, we see that at the end, I feel like, too. This
I didn't
final
even think
this
about
final
that.
dagger of I bested you. I'm better than you.
Well, okay, can we talk about that? I know we're jumping around, but like goodness, like this is such a big point. So like he goes to help Roku. He from 100 miles away, he feels the earth quaking. He sees the smoke. He sees this volcano erupting. He travels. He gets there. He helps out. And then
He gets his life saved.
he gets his life saved.
I'm very passionate.
He
that
saves
needs to be
Roku's
mentioned.
life.
Absolutely. No,
He-
Roku.
Like Roku saves Sozin.
I know. And
So,
then
yes.
Roku saves Sozin.
Correct.
And then when finally Roku is taken down by this toxic gas, Sozin is able to look him in the eye and leave him there. And
he rationalizes it to himself. He
and-
says, without you, all my plans are suddenly possible.
Well, and this is where I'm curious because to me, had he been in that mindset beforehand, it would have been easier to let Roku fail from a distance than it is to look him in the eye and say that. So for me, it would be easier to let him fail from a distance and be like, oh, he's gone. Now I can do my thing. Rather than going through those. To me, it seems like it would be so much harder, and yet he does it. Like, I'm really curious about y'all's thoughts on this.
I think he wanted to prove that he was better than Roku. I think it was a statement of I'm outlasting you. I am better than you. I am the one that people should have been worshiping this whole time.
I perceive that moment as it. I don't think he had made up his mind about what. Yeah, I don't know that he wanted Roku to die when he was watching the volcano erupt.
Yeah.
From a distance. I think he made that decision in the moment on the island.
And I think
That's a more generous assumption than
I
mine.
I think I'm
Told
more
you
on,
I struggled.
I told you I think I'm more on Cameron's page here because I think something in his perception changed. He sensed something. He became aware through his senses on that island more than he was aware of it when he was farther away. And his further away response was to care for his friend. And then I think when he saw Roku, what he saw was not you. I think when he saw him, he associated him with his failures. And it was harder to look him in the eye and see his friend up close than it was from farther away.
I also noticed that, I assumed that Roku, did you notice in their opening fight, Roku and Sozin's, it mirrors the final fight with the volcano. How, so they're dueling, they're
Firebending,
sparring
yeah.
in a courtyard, and Sozin backs Roku up to a tree root.
Yep.
A force of nature, exploits that to defeat Roku, grabs him to keep him from falling, but then lets him fall.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I hate him. Not Cameron. Love Cameron. Hate Sozin.
Sozin's it's so problematic, and that makes him. It almost makes him worse that he's able to see the humanity of Roku dying, and then able to walk away from that than it is from further away.
I wonder
right?
how much of it was going back to the island to help with this volcano erupting, seeing just how powerful Roku is,
Interesting.
and thinking, I couldn't beat him. I think it might have been seeing Roku in that moment fight the volcano, and once Sozin showed up, win.
Yeah. It's just built. I think it's just built up years and years of resentment. But like it's,
Yeah.
I think I have to be more generous with this because from this distance, he wanted to help his friend, and I just think his resentment overpowered that initial thing, and that buildup of resentment was too powerful.
Yeah, he couldn't. Ironically, I mean, we learn that firebending is restraint. To master firebending is to master restraint. Zhang tells us that the nation, the Sun Warriors. That's
Yes,
the word I
there
was
we
looking
go.
for.
Okay, cool.
The Sun Warriors teach us that. I mean, it's Zhang's first like real experience with Aang is restrain this fire in this leaf.
Yeah, hold it. Yeah.
And so and it's interesting that Sozin, Azulon, and Ozai, the bad quote firebenders, have no restraint. Zhao.
Fascinating.
Zhao sets all those ships on fire.
Well, it's not just that. It's the Agni Kai with Zuko, where even though he loses, he can't restrain himself, and he fights back even after Zuko's turned his back.
Well, and so I think the question: so how do we perceive ourselves when shame is involved?
Ooh. Well, that's exactly what shame. I mean, it makes us seem unlovable. Like
Right.
we cannot find connection.
And so when you perceive yourself that way, it's going to affect your outward behavior, as we see it affect Sozin throughout this process, right?
So what
I'm
you're
not
saying,
as good as Roku.
Okay.
There's more shame building up over time.
So
I think that's when he sees his opportunity to prove that he's better. He takes it.
Yep. I escaped. I got away.
Well, because even at this point, not the end, but does Roku get married first?
It's at his wedding.
Yeah, it's at the wedding.
So like Roku's the first to get married as well. Like I
That's-
wonder if all this
Oh,
stuff
I see what you're saying.
like builds on
It seems that
itself.
Roku is the first to get married.
Yes.
Well, it seems like so you're saying that it's again like Roku is getting all the goodies before
Correct.
him.
The
He's
life,
getting all the accolades. He's
correct.
getting all the praise, and Sozin's just
and
in
I'm
his
went
shadow.
to-
supposed,
he
and
went
I'm
to the
supposed
Earth
to be the
Kingdom
Fire Lord.
He went to the Earth Kingdom and got jacked.
That's so true. Did you know that was when he took off his shirt for the last scene of the Earth? Oh my god.
The moment where he says it's bitter work, I point to the TV and go, ooh, because that's the title of the episode. Yep, bitter
for
work.
Zuko,
It's
yeah.
also a loose translation of Kung Fu.
Really?
Interesting.
I did not know
It
that.
means like hard or bitter work. Kung specifically.
This is why you're here.
I don't know these little
I've had
tidbits.
I've had years. This is my brain. It is a Rolodex. Of all this kind of useless entertainment trivia.
All right. Is there anything else regarding the Avatar Roku / Sozin? What perception wise? What are we missing on that?
Just the foreshadowing, I think, of Sozin being an opportunist in the opening fight. Seeing that Roku is
Oh, that's a
one-footed
great
against
point.
a tree root and deciding to exploit that.
There's such good
Agreed.
storytelling. This is such good storytelling.
It's like the writing is good.
Yeah. Like it's like
Award-winning,
Like if this
even.
were rated, this was probably rated like really well.
Yeah, it's like people like this show.
What?
It's like it's highly rated and people enjoy it and it's got tons of fans. All right, let's talk. So a little moment for perception for me is how our learnings affect our perception. And so I specifically am referring to Azula, who is very clear about reciting the Fire Nation history, but is and how that creates her own perception or leads into her own perception when it's so wrong. Like we learn that what she's been told and taught, which we can assume is what every child in the Fire Nation is told and taught, and we've seen the educational system
and
in
the
the
headband.
Yep. And so how much does the learnings that you have that you think are correct play into the perception of the world that you're in?
Well, I think this whole season, the beginning, the opening half of this season kind of plays with the audience's perception of the Fire Nation and the gang's perception by, the audience by extension. But it shows every episode so far, the headband, the
Painted lady.
Sokka's master,
Yeah.
the painted lady. You see these Fire Nation villages or
That
towns
are good?
that
These people are
have
good? Yeah.
good people in them, or have people, I guess I should say, who are not inherently evil.
Yes. Well, that's the quote, right? Like I think Roku says it at the end Aang says it at the end, right? Is people are neither good nor bad, but they have the capacity for great evil and for great good.
Everyone has to be treated like they are worth giving a chance.
Yeah.
Is Aang's wrap-up quote for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important message because I think they even walk away like, Sozin's a jerk. And he's like, I don't think that's the message. And I'm like, fine, Aang, tell me the message. That's how me as an audience member, I'm like, I get it, Aang. I should not hate Sozin.
Well, this follows The Beach, which is probably the biggest shift in perception as
so
the
true.
audience.
It's not a filler episode. I will say that every time.
Yep. Absolutely not. To take the show's, quote, villains, quote, and show them in normal society.
You're humanizing them.
Yeah. You see that Azula is a child bred for war and literally cannot function without it.
Yeah.
Literally. That was
Yeah.
very scary, the way that she talked to Chan. Very frightening.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that just plays into the environment that you're in. The people that are around you are absolutely going to shift your perception of the world that you're living in.
Well, it's just like it's the idea and concept that history is told by the victors, right? Whoever won is the people who are telling the story, right? And that's very clear in the Fire Nation, right? It's the
Air
narrative.
Nation armies.
Exactly,
quote unquote.
right? And Aang, we see Aang respond to that in the headband, and we talked about that. But like, it's just so interesting to think about this idea of perception. It's based off our knowledge, which is based off of our bias, which is like there's so much that like we hear something, we learn it, we assume it to be true, then confirmation bias starts to help us
Find the one thing that's
find
going
the
to
things that confirm
that,
those, right? And ugh,
When I think that's why I said when I want us to challenge perception as reality.
that's what I wrote.
Well, in leader, this is one of those things where leadership is conflicting. Being a leader, working through things that are not necessarily binaries or black and white, because perception is reality. If someone shares with me that they're going through something, I need to take that as truth and work with them on that. At the same time, when I think something is my personal truth, I also need to work through that in a meaningful way to challenge that regularly. And it's tough when you have so many avenues to confirm your own beliefs and biases based off of your social media circle and the people that you follow and unfollow, because yes, I don't want to follow people that I think are dehumanizing or creating a mental space for me that's tough, and I also want to expose myself to viewpoints that aren't mine. And so how do I navigate that perception? Because one of it is, nope, I'm exhausted when I get off of Instagram, and I need to unfollow these people that are making me angry before I go to bed. And I also need to make sure I'm getting more information that's not just what's confirming my own belief. And so how do I do that?
I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, I don't know if there is one.
I do not know. But if you figure it out, or if someone tells you, I would like to know.
Yeah. So I think that's the moment for me is where leadership is not this binary. It has conflicting ideals, and you have to be able to navigate that. You have to understand that that's important. And I think we see that with Azula. I think we see that because we're going to say Azula's wrong or acting poorly majority of the time.
You think?
We also can have empathy for why she is that way.
Well, yeah,
I
I'm
have
an
empathy for
Azula.
Sozin.
I'm an Azula apologist. I live for her. I do. I love her.
doesn't she get better in the comics? Like, don't we get a little bit more love
She gets
for her?
a little bit more humanization, kind of like The Beach.
Yeah,
it's
right.
a lot more. It's more of like the opening of, and it makes me think. She is also the grandchild of Avatar Roku and Firelord Sozin.
Right.
Well, I think
But
that's so important to highlight.
Oh, I love
She
that
doesn't
moment.
get an Iroh. She has Ozai breeding her for war. She has Lo and Lee, who are not anything to her personally. They are her firebending mentors, even though they aren't firebenders. Like, she does not have someone. Ursa mentors Zuko because Ozai favors Azula so much. So she never had anyone to show her what else she could be.
Which identity plays a major role in creating your own perception of yourself.
Yeah.
The people that you have around you that are creating identity spaces for you, which is why things like representation through Avatar and Legend of Korra, I think was so important. Because you internalize that. Whether you want to say that art isn't important, I think that you're drastically wrong. Like, seeing characters and people that you can connect with and vibe with and help be that person that Azula never had is so drastically important.
But I always sympathize with the villains because, like, I'm a Disney villain fanatic, and I look for that in all my villains. Is the why I love them.
Why do you
Disclaimer,
love Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Because he is the most realistic Disney villain in history.
Oh, that's what terrifies me the most about him.
But he's the only villain that Disney ever wrote that could exist, in my opinion.
Clayton
Clayton
could have existed.
That's true.
But yes, Claude Frollo is so real that that's
Terrifying.
why it's so terrifying.
Disclaimer: Azula did horrible things, and I am not defending the things that Azula has done.
Oh, I've talked extensively about my perception of Azula, so I'm just gonna hold back.
We are not professionals and cannot diagnose Azula.
Sociopaths.
Yeah. But I wonder. You see, in The Beach, you see that more empathetic. She shows empathy to Zuko. She goes and finds him at the house, and she says, "Come down to the beach with me. This place is depressing." To then, now that she's back in the palace, back under Ozai's eye, you see right away in that first scene with her, she is back to herself.
It's so true. It's so
And
true.
I want, is that because she's back around Ozai, or is that just,
I just think that's her natural operative. That's her natural state, right? Yeah. Okay.
2 quick quotes I want to lift up that are in this episode.
I like quotes.
When love is real, it finds a way. So Roku talks about that and says that to Aang, which I think is that's a quote I like. When love is real, it finds a way. The other one is Roku sees the colony, and Sozin says, "Our nation first." And I think that I wanted to highlight how language shifts our perception of the world that we're living in.
Especially when we're unaware of how it's affecting us. That can so easily slip under the radar, but that type of language matters.
Language matters.
Words matter.
Yep.
We've talked about that.
Yep.
And when they go unnoticed, when we aren't sure why, a lot of times what happens is we hear a certain phrase and we don't know why we disagree with it. But if we pay attention to, what are the words really saying here? Oftentimes, if we become aware through our senses, all of a sudden we can realize why these words are so important and why language matters. And that is a clear indicator of something that's very problematic.
Yep. So that language, when I heard that, I was like, that's familiar language to hear, talking about nationalism and our nation first before others, and that it struck a chord. Yeah. Huh.
Interesting.
Strange.
Okay.
But those are 2 quotes I wanted to lift up because I thought that they were
Yeah.
incredibly important.
What about other moments of perception in this episode?
I thought those quotes did a great job of talking about perception, but we'll go with you, Ben. What do you have?
Viewing this through perception for the first time, I got the eruption being symbolic of the war. Roku, it came out of nowhere.
He just couldn't hold it back anymore.
He was succeeding at holding it back, and then a second eruption came, and he could not do it.
Oh my goodness, you're so perceptive.
You are better.
He's good at us. He's better, he's good at seeing these things. This is that's awesome.
That was one of those mind blown moments when I was watching it for this.
That's like a meme moment where you're somebody writes a nice write up on Twitter and you read it and you're like, oh my god, wow, and then wow, dang.
I mean, because it is inevitable. You cannot stop a volcanic eruption, no matter how powerful a bender you are.
Yeah.
I think that Sozin would have started this war somehow.
Well, how fascinating is it? He's living and choosing to live in such a precarious spot too is really an interesting thing to think about. Is choosing to live on an active volcano.
You're assuming it was a choice.
Hawaiians have entered the chat.
Yeah. But you're assuming it's a choice. You're assuming we've talked about the privilege that comes with choosing where you are living.
It's called Avatar Roku Island.
It is now. It is now, but at that point, did they have another option? Or are we talking about generations of people that just had to live there and didn't have a way of getting off that island?
Again, you bring a fair point.
Thank you.
I think the Avatar probably has more choice and agency than the other people.
Yeah, but
who
if
are
his
living
family
there.
and friends and everybody else don't have that ability, like, where would you choose to live?
I also
I don't know.
I also wonder, would Roku, because I perceive him, especially in this in his last moments, I felt his age,
Yeah, that's so
and
true.
I have to wonder,
Assume he felt his age.
because I mean, Sozin was 82 when he started the war. Azula,
Yeah.
it's in the
It's in the Fire Nation history.
Yeah, and he was 82, so Roku was also 82. They have the same birthday.
Yep.
But it seems like Sozin is so much more fit in this moment than Roku because everyone ages differently. And I wonder, would Roku have been able to stop something like Sozin's comet? Say Roku had survived this. Would he have been able to stop what Sozin wanted to do when the comet came?
That's an interesting point.
Well, and does it speak into the being willing to hand the mantle over to someone else? Being able to know when it's not your baton to carry and that it's someone else's baton to carry.
Or was it the universe acting as
making that decision
and making that
for
decision
you.
for him,
Mhm.
right? Which that's for all of you theologists out there to determine. But that's a interesting point to lift up.
If you have thoughts, you can do a nice little voice memo and send it to the
Send
RKV
it
at gmail.com.
We
I
would
did a
appreciate
voice
it.
memo.
That's
it
right.
Was great.
It was. It was so
it
great.
was really helpful to listen to, actually. So thank you for responding to it.
Great. Yeah. See, y'all, it's fun to do voicemails. You get a response. It's really nice. I recommend
Nobody
it.
leaves you on red.
And then, you can follow us at BNB_pod on Instagram and Twitter. That was a plug that probably could have gone somewhere else in this episode, but
Yeah.
I put it here. So that's where it will stay.
I liked it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about perception. So Toph sees differently, therefore she perceives differently.
And she
right?
sees the whole city.
And
on
so
her ash.
I
Love
found it
that moment.
interesting that like Katara's like, there's nothing here, and then she's like, well, having different skills allows you to have different perceptions, which to me is really interesting because when perception is reality, that even more puts that into perspective of it being problematic, right? When our perception, there's nothing here, that's very problematic because that's clearly not the whole story. And so it just is really bringing me to this focus of perception is, I have to assume that perception is reality for others, and I have to assume that perception is not my reality for me. I have to constantly question my own perceptions and constantly believe the perceptions of others.
Which doesn't mean you can't affirm your own perceptions as
Yeah.
correct later, but you need to challenge them.
Exactly.
But I think, honestly, I didn't even think about it being a perfect allegory for, I don't have this skill set, I don't have this ability to perceive this way, and so look, nothing is here. Versus, no, an entire city, an entire story, an entire
Right.
experience is here.
Hundreds of houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Death, despair, destruction are here, and you can't see it. And it's not because you don't want to. Sometimes you can't. And so how do I help show you that?
By listening to other people that have different experiences than us.
Huh.
Mic drop.
Don't drop this mic.
Yeah, don't do that.
Well, I don't have to because it's attached to the table.
Yeah, but Max, you can add in sound effects of snaps, right? Do that in post.
That's,
Great,
that's
thank you.
funny. That's
Max,
funny.
just
That's
hold
funny.
hands.
Oh man, that's
We are laughing.
we're laughing.
We are saying jokes.
That's a good point though. If we go to
Yeah.
that last moment, right? It's Aang helps shift perspective in that last moment by everybody. We said this already, but everybody's like, "No, Sozin's a jerk," and then Aang's like, "No, that's not the point here," right? And then they're all like, "Oh, I like looking at the world this way," and then they're all holding hands, and Sokka's like, "Well, actually," and
Scientifically speaking.
but like, just hold hands, and that's a moment there that I'm just like, Sokka, just hold hands. And that's such a good line for me because, like, I'm the guy who's going to be like, actually. And it's just like, just hold hands. It's a good call. That's a call for me.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, that line was directed at me.
Well, and even Toph, who challenges the gang's perception usually because of her experience.
True.
She was also on that page with Sokka and Katara about the Fire Nation, and it's her that says it's like these people are born bad.
Yep.
And then Aang has to challenge that and open her.
What a good show! It's so
But
good.
then she's also so engaged and wanting to believe that friendships can extend lifetimes. Like that is such a hopeful moment for her, and we rarely see that type of vulnerability from Toph. And
That's so true.
That was such a powerful moment of just her having hope and belief, and the power that brought to that moment and to the gang.
Power vulnerability.
Brene Brown, y'all.
Have you heard of her?
Yeah.
Who is she?
What does she do?
There's a TED Talk. Actually, there's two. But anyway, let's talk about Zuko for a second,
She's too
can we?
famous to be on this podcast.
If you have a connection to Brene Brown, we still are looking for that connection.
I'm going to put this out into the universe and hope that one day it comes back to us. Like, Brene Brown is going to be on this podcast at some point.
We'll see.
If we do this podcast for like the next 15 years.
We'll see.
I will listen in anticipation of that day.
It's coming.
All right, let's talk about Zuko for a second, because that's my last one. You all might have more, but that's my last thing I want to talk about. So I find it interesting that he is delivered a message from an anonymous human of some sort.
Lee. There's a million Lees.
Yeah. But so my question is, who actually leaves the message? Who is Iroh controlling? Because we learned that it is Iroh who sends the message. But who does Iroh have that much influence over? And I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are.
I wonder if it's Serena Williams.
The guard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ming.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't, because she seems very
So
taken
just
aback
to be
when
clear,
he's,
the guard's voice is that of Serena Williams.
Correct.
Because I don't think everybody will have known that.
I think most Avatar fans know that. Not to shame anyone who doesn't know that. Like, it's totally okay to not know that, but...
Cool.
But yeah, that's true. We haven't seen her yet.
She also seems a little taken back when he's kind of like, you need to not be here. I think if she was in on his schemes, that she would have been like, got it, totally.
That's fair.
Versus like her being like, oh, okay.
Given the kind of person that Iroh is and how he treats people, especially in that palace which is controlled by Ozai, I imagine that he, has some kind of butler or something that respects him and would do something like that for him to deliver a message.
Is there another sage that has like that
that's
feels
true.
the importance of?
Oh, interesting.
Because I assume
A
the
good
other. I'm going to
sage.
make the assumption that the first sage that helped the gang is dead. I'm making that assumption.
I'm going to assume they're in prison for life.
I think the one who helped.
They're at the Boiling Rock.
Is dead. And then, but maybe it's a new sage who feels important. It feels like this is an important moment.
Interesting. If you have a theory as to who this person is,
wanna know who did
we
it.
would love to know. Because I don't think
And
Iroh...
in what room and with what weapon?
Yeah, exactly. But if you know, give us a shout, because we want to hear from you and know, because I'm genuinely curious. Okay. Then I think Iroh has a lot of control in this jail cell that is really interesting, because he's able to hide artifacts.
Yeah,
He's
an
able
artifact
to...
of the Crown Prince.
Someone had to go get that for him, and it was probably the same person who dropped
And
off this
where
letter.
did they get it?
And how did he know about this crack in the wall?
Iroh plans ahead
Ooh.
like Darth Sidious. Okay?
I wonder.
Did he plan getting captured?
So
No.
so Roku did Roku put it on when he gets out of bed to go
No.
fight? So he doesn't.
No, he doesn't have
checked-
any...
I specifically watched.
So
part
I
of it.
wonder. So I wonder if his wife has it, passes
okay.
it down to Mom, and if Mom is secretly running around the Fire Nation. But I know that she's been brainwashed. What's the deal? What's the comics?
Oh, Ursa.
Yes.
So
Does she know all this?
She does. It's kind of loopy, as comics tend to be. But she finds a spirit that in her wipes her memory and gives her a new face.
Right.
But eventually that is undone. But at the time that like all of this
Happens,
when she was in the
she
palace
would
and
have
stuff,
been-
she was herself. It was only after Ozai forces her into exile that she changes her identity.
And she doesn't change all this until after all the events that are currently taking place. So in this moment, Ursa is face washed.
Yes, they find her after the end of book 3.
Great. So it couldn't have been her. There goes that theory. It is not Ursa who's delivering this message.
Not to my knowledge.
Because she
Well-
would have been face washed.
Again,
Barring
curious.
further retcons. I don't know.
Also, curious about y'all's perception of this, because this is a mystery that I would like to solve. That's all I have. What do y'all have? Y'all anything else?
No, I have more for gratitude when we get there.
We're not there yet.
I know we're not there yet. We got a devotion that we got to think of answers for.
I want to talk a little bit more about that Crown Prince top knot holder.
Okay, the artifact.
I want it.
Despite how Roku ended in the afterlife, or whatever you consider the spirit world to be, but I think it's pretty well acknowledged that it's the afterlife because
Sure.
Iroh is there, or what have you. But he, in the Matrix, they talk about residual self-image and how like you project what you want your person to be in the Matrix, and that's I imagine how Roku's current appearance is the way it is, and not mangled by lava. So
Because that's typically the lore around ghosts and spirits, is that you
Right.
are in the spirit world based off the way that you died.
Well, and we see Kyoshi. We see all the avatars that manifest themselves in front of Aang, right? The astral projection that happens in front of Aang later in this series, or later in this season, which is later in the same difference. But anyway, like, we see them appearing not as old, whereas Roku is choosing to appear this way.
Right. And I wonder if that's how he views his peak. But what really spoke to me was that he is still choosing to wear Sozin's gift. Despite the betrayal that led to his death, he is still honoring that friendship.
I wonder if he perceives it to be his fault. I wonder if he perceives that
I absolutely
that he
believe
let
he does.
Sozin down. And so that's his
Well,
way
we
of
hear
kind
him.
of-
We hear him say, "It's my fault. This is happening." We hear him say that throughout
Yeah.
the series. Like he sees that in season 1.
But do you think he views that like I should have killed Sozin? Or do you think he views it as I should have handled those situations differently?
That.
Yeah, I would hope the latter.
Yeah.
The most generous assumption would be that one.
Well, and that's one of the things that I found problematic with Roku is when he does put Sozin on a pike. His words are, "I will put an end to this permanently." He is threatening his life,
Yep.
and that
That's
was
Kyoshi talking.
maybe. But like, yeah, I just I found that to be problematic.
Kiyoshi's definitely on Roku's shoulder like, end him.
Do it. It's so much fun.
Finish him.
Y'all, I want to be kind towards. I think that I want to see
Give him
better.
justice.
Oh, let me be
It's
clear.
just
This is
us.
admiration for Kiyoshi. Just us. It's
Just us, Roku. Just kill him.
Justice.
Justice. It's just us here. No one would know.
And on that note, we're going to take a short break before we head into our devotion, which is where we believe the best in people. See you in a second.
I blame this episode with Sozin for bringing all this out of me. I will work to be better. All right, break time.
All right, welcome back. It's time for our devotion. But before we get to our devotion, I want to just enlighten you all as to the riveting off-topic conversation that we had while everything was paused. And I just think it's so what?
It was on topic. It was off mic.
Super on topic, super off mic. But like everybody just was like, "Oh, we should have talked about this. We should have talked about this." We're not going to talk about all those things, but we are going to lift up a few things. So, Sunshine, you have a really powerful concept of a character that we didn't talk about at all.
Yes.
Who is it?
I want a full story arc of Sud, and I want it now.
Cool, that's all you get. Cameron.
Give it to me now.
Okay.
I want today.
That is my golden egg. I want a Sud story arc, and I want it now.
Well, I have a golden ticket to our next topic. So, Cameron, here we go. Tell me what you were just like. You lifted up something that was really neat that was just worth pointing out.
Oh, so I was watching this episode, and there's that scene where it ends with Sozin giving Roku the top knot holder. But before that, Roku says, "Well, I was packing, but the monks told me I won't need any worldly possessions anymore." And that got me thinking, how much of each culture is the Avatar expected by the world or by that culture to adopt? And is that only while they're training there, or is that in their life? You know?
Yeah. I think for me, if I were the Avatar, I would want to be as impartial as possible, and like I think that's part of why Republic City was created by Aang, right? And I think it was created by Aang. It was his idea, baby, whatever. Anyway, for Legend of Korra people. Anyway, I just think an impartial, for me, I would want to be impartial if I were an Avatar.
How much does that come off as? This is a reference that some people will get. How much does that come off as being like Aldous Snow from Forgetting Sarah Marshall? Because he's got all the tattoos.
Really? This is where you take this?
Yes.
I got that reference.
But he's got all the tattoos of the different cultures, and is
Right.
like, I'm a citizen of the world. But
Yeah.
really, like, you're not. And
Right.
I think the Avatar is different.
It comes off as cultural
Right.
appropriation.
Is the Avatar appropriating culture?
Right. Or is it you're a Fire Nation? So be Fire Nation, but also have an awareness of everything else. Like, it's okay to be Fire Nation, but also think and care about the Water Tribes and the Earth Kingdom.
Right.
But be you. That's how I think.
Because Sozin, the villain of this episode, talks about, our nation first. And so how much of that, you bring up an interesting point about cultural appropriation. That very important. That, if you're a Fire Nation Avatar, I mean, none of the avatars outside the air nomads that we know of get tattoos that would mark an airbending master in that culture. But the avatars are airbending masters. So that I wonder,
how would it be perceived by
Right.
the rest of the 4 other nations if that did happen? It's just an interesting concept. So, yeah, I just wanted to lift those couple conversations up. We're not going to really just dive in and fully flesh them out, but I do want to get to our Devo. So, our devotion today is looking at perception through a lens of air. So, who wants to go first? Who wants to talk about their takeaway when they think about perception in air?
me, because I don't want to forget what I'm going to say.
Okay.
No, I wrote it down so that I would remember to do it. Air is the element of change. We're shown that consistently in
Ooh.
the Avatar universe. So for me, I want to focus on changing my perception of somebody who I maybe made like a snap judgment about, or especially in these days, the wayward social media post can really prompt me to some harsh actions. So I am called to reach out to someone of whom I have a bad impression at the moment, but have not always, and try and like work through that, converse with them, and like figure out.
That sounds so tough. Like, I think about doing that, and I'm like, oh, God.
It's exhausting just thinking about it, isn't it?
Yeah, just thinking about it is exhausting. So, wow. Man, how about you, Sunshine? What comes up for you?
I'm going to add on to that because I think for me you can't force the direction of the wind, but you can either shelter from it or you can harness it, but there's different ways you can navigate it. And so I think for me it's how do we challenge our perception, if perception or if new information is the wind, how do we take it in and either use it or learn from it or challenge our own perceptions? And so I think for me this week it's going to be how do I challenge how I am seeing things, and making sure that I'm pushing forth there's no right way to word this, but how do I use this information to better who I am and better how I'm seeing things around me and learning from other people. And so instead of necessarily fighting against the wind, learning from it and letting it be something that could guide me if I decide to let it.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad because I don't know if I made sense when I said it, so I'm happy that was something that worked. But yeah, I think that's what I'm going to try to do.
I think it's a very neat perspective. Yeah, so I've been teaching a class, and facilitating a class is probably a better word. Essentially creating a community with people and just discussing kind of similar to the Vespers project. If you listen to that podcast for my other podcast, but essentially creating an in-person conversation that's trying to build community in a safe container for us to have difficult conversation. And I'm facilitating a group of people this week, and we've been talking about really tough subjects, just all the things that are current. And I've been thinking about my language and my and what I've noticed is something I taught and learned early on was the rather than asking does that make sense, instead asking am I making sense, because it shifts the perception, right? It makes it so that I'm not making you seem dumb for not knowing by asking does that make sense. It's not, the onus is not on you, but on rather my communication of the idea. And I've gotten back into the habit of saying does that make sense instead of am I making sense, and that came up for me today, and I realized it, and I want to bring that back. So my goal is to really focus on whenever I'm asking that question, it's am I making sense rather than does that make sense.
It's bitter work working on yourself.
Oh God!
There it is. Found it.
Ugh! Wow. Okay.
It's kung fu.
It's yeah, but so now
Max hated that joke too.
it's time for gratitude moments for all of us. So what you got? What is it? What you got?
I'm gonna lift up Fang, because that moment where he goes in circles around Roku is,
My heart.
yes, heartbreaking. And I don't think we often give characters like Appa and Aang, or Appa and Fang, the credit that they deserve. They're literally
that rhymed.
They're literally carrying the Avatar and the weight of the world like on their shoulders for majority of their lives. And if it weren't for them, these Avatars might not be able to do what they're supposed to do. And so I want to give snaps and gratitude to Fang. He was also very loyal to be able to go in and try to protect
I love that.
Roku that way.
Yeah.
I love that.
Love the loyalty of an animal companion.
Oh.
I'm gonna go hug my dog after we finish recording.
Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna pick Tamin. And when we were talking about who we were grateful for offline, Tamin came up because like how hard would it be to be married to the Avatar? And I just think about all of the pressure and all of the expectations and all of the everybody's perception of who we should be if we're married to the Avatar, and the judgment. And what we see from her this episode is we see her noticing Roku from afar. We see Roku noticing her from afar, but it seems as though Aang's perception of Tamin is that she doesn't notice Roku, but it's very clear that she does. Every time Roku blushes and as Tamin walks by, you notice her like shift her eyes and start blushing as well. In the crowd, she's blushing. She's clearly aware and notices him, and that in and of itself is unnoticed by Roku. It's unnoticed by a lot of people, and I just have a lot of empathy for people who are walking through life, especially women who are walking through the world who are seemingly unnoticed, and that needs to change, and we need to be more aware. We need to perceive more the women in our lives, and so that's my gratitude. I'm grateful for her, and I'm certain the impact that she had on Roku's life and on the world because of that.
Yes.
Yep.
Snaps. Max, snap sound effect here. Thank you.
Why is this a thing? Why are you doing this?
Soundboard.
It's going to turn into my bit for the rest of season 3.
That actually made me change my answer.
Wow.
So originally I was going to lift up Toph for reasons we've already talked about, that, she is constantly the one challenging the gang's visual perception.
Yeah.
And, sometimes by extension, other perception. But it reminded me, talking about Tamin, of the scene where it seems that she doesn't really notice Roku. And when he just collapses on the ground. So
Yeah.
I'm going to lift up very specifically young Sozin.
Okay.
Because in that moment, I never bought their friendship more than when he just starts putting grass on Roku's face. Roku has just been like dejected by this super attractive girl, this girl that he is very attracted to, and Sozin's like, it's rough, buddy.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Putting grass on Roku's face. And
Here's some grass.
right. So like it's just one of those weird things that like only your friend would do.
You could do, and
That's so true. What a moment.
And so that reminds me of like my own really close friendships and the stuff that if you were to put it in an animated show, people would be like, why are you putting grass on somebody? But those kind of friendships are what I would like to lift up. So
And that's just humanizes Sozin in such an important way.
when at the end he does it with like ash.
Sunshine! Oh my god!
toxic gas, actually.
You're a terrible person.
No, Sozin's a terrible
You!
person.
I just...
Don't call me a terrible person for pointing out that Sozin is a terrible person.
I want to clarify. I said I wanted to lift up young Sozin.
I do love that moment.
Wow! Gosh! And on that note, good lord!
It matters
Just
not
like-
what someone is born, but what they grow to be. And that is...
A murderer in Sozin.
No, he
I was
didn't
gonna
murder
say
him. He just left.
unfortunate.
He let Roku die. He
In
didn't.
Sozin's case?
Like,
If Kiyoshi murdered, what's his
I don't
face?
think he did.
Yeah,
this
the
is
Conqueror.
This is your headcanon.
Look,
There's
it's
a-
just us, okay?
There's a difference. He
Between
let-
just us and
he
justice,
let him
I
die.
agree.
So Kiyoshi just split the earth and the dude fell. Sozin let
He-
him die.
he
But
also
Kiyoshi didn't
stood his
personally see the
ground.
difference.
Yeah, Kiyoshi didn't, but here's what I'm saying. Yay, gratitude.
Sunshine. I'm appalled.
This is not the best version of myself, and it's because I was very angry at Sozin this entire episode.
Take note, listeners. This is what happens when you get angry.
It shows you that it's progress, not perfection, and I will say that every episode.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right. Next week, we're looking at the runaway through transparency, so join us for that conversation.
That'll be good.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And then after transparency is the Puppet Master.
And yeah, that's gonna be just a
We
huge
haven't
episode.
picked a lens for that terrifying episode.
If you have a lens that you want us to look at that episode through, you can join our Patreon and therefore get on our Facebook page. And there we love to entertain our Patreon users to talk about what lenses we want to do. And we want to thank Jasmine for our lens next week.
Yeah.
She gave us a wonderful opportunity to learn through a new lens. So it was
One
her
that I wouldn't have
suggestion.
picked, so
I wouldn't
that
have
was-
picked
it worked
either.
out so great.
It was really neat. So I'm really excited to dive into that with all
Yeah,
of
that's
you.
going to be really cool.
Cameron, thank you
my gosh.
so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. This has been so cool.
You're better at this than we are, and I love having people that are better than me on the show. And that's not sarcasm. Like,
No,
I'd
yeah.
like to learn and be better, because clearly I'm still working on things.
Factually inaccurate, but continue. I am better than no one at this. I've just been watching the show a lot longer.
Well, when you know better, you
You do better. Yeah, that's right.
So,
All right, I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
this has been Pruitt.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.